Hi, welcome to Virgo. So first we got to make sure we're all symmetrical, we're all in order. My hair is straight and flat and the camera angle's perfect and the microphone's on then I remembered I was a Gemini and whatever. But anyway, what I just gave you a little experience of is some of the things that Virgo thinks about. This is important. We do need to think about these things. The sun is entering Virgo on August 22nd and leaving for Libra on September 22nd. So in that time frame, while the sun is in Virgo, I'm going to give you the overall of what the kind of themes are for this month. So we just came out of Leo, and Leo has a lot of had a lot of interesting, will be a word, hard aspects to it. So it was a more challenging month. It was in the heat of the summer. It was there was a lot that was really going on. So I'm really hoping in this last week of Leo that Venus trine Jupiter energy was able to give you a little relief, and ease and grace. That's it. Even if nothing happened, that's better than something difficult happening. So just thinking about it from that perspective. So with the sun moving into Virgo, remembering that the sun is our life force. So I'm making these videos based on where the sun is instead of the calendar month, because I feel like it's really important to follow the sun because the planets all follow the sun. And we all follow the sun. So it's an important piece of really understanding how we revolve around the sun and where it lays in our chart. So Virgo, the very simplest answer is Virgo is yin, resides more in what we would call the feminine gender. It is a mutable earth sign, or in ancient astrology, they called that double-bodied. So it's an earth sign. However, one of the things about Virgo is it has that ability, like Gemini, Sagittarius, and Pisces, to be able to see both sides. Virgo can carry energy from both the Leo side as well as the Libra side. It's like that in between, that ability to be able to float back and forth in between two different signs. Now, the good news is it does have some earth component to it. So this brings some grounding to it. So what is Virgo's gift to the world? Virgo's gift to the world is having discernment and discriminating eye. So for instance, one of the ways they do that is through like spreadsheets and lists and organizational tools. That's one of Virgo's greatest gifts to the world, is how are we going to get something organized? I'm not saying they're always good at it, and they will never think that they are good enough at it. However, this is one of their gifts to the world, and they're probably way more organized than the rest of us. However, they're never going to give themselves that kind of credit. So because the ultimate thing about Virgo is it's ruled by the Virgin. It's Virgo the Virgin. And interestingly, as I studied in my ancient astrology class, the way we portray Virgin in the modern day versus the way it was actually understood in ancient days is that the Virgin is more about not being owned. So Virgos actually like to be alone. They're also social because they're ruled by the planet Mercury, but they really do require a certain amount of alone time because they have to tamp down their anxiety. So, and when they are with others, they feel a literal, if their sun is in Virgo, they have an unbelievable urge to help the people they're with. So if someone needs a glass of water, if someone needs to be listened to, if someone needs to have them drive somewhere, Virgo is constantly on the edge of being able to do that for others. However, it can create a lot of anxiety within them it's basically to always be on their game, right? So one of the things that's really important for them is to make sure that they understand that their autonomy and when they need time alone and when they need to be able to say no. So Virgo, if you don't practice the word no, you might want to think about it this month because this is a really good time to play with it. Virgos are very interested in that organizational capacity. They also use it as an internal world of health. So how they do their health. and how they take care of others' health. I find an incredible amount of Virgo energy that is that practices either Reiki on themselves or on others, and practice alternative healing methods. They really love alternative healing methods, whether they do them for others or whether it's just a practice they do inside their own home for themselves and anyone that lives with them. And then the service component, which I just talked about, they're definitely in the service industry. The other thing I find with Virgo energy is some kind of engineers. And so when I say that, people are like, oh God, no way. However, I literally find engineers in this Virgo energy. And also I find they're, you know, household engineers, or they are organizational engineers. They run a closet organizing business. They are, and so they engineer organizational structure within someone's closet. Um, they are some kind of engineering. It can be like even an organizational structure within a business. So I find Virgos, going back to that double bodied, being able to work both sides. I find Virgos can be really good at middle managing within a company. Like because they're able to work with the people who are, for instance, on the production line, and then also with the higher ups who are in the executive suite. They tend to be really good at being able to go back and forth and be able to disseminate messaging, because again, they're ruled by Mercury, which is the messenger. So being able to bring the messaging back and forth between those two different areas of a business. So that is, one of their many gifts, as well as the spreadsheet component. I find accountants in here, people who manage all kinds of spreadsheets, money, that kind of thing, financial planners, all of that. So those are just some of the very basic examples, but think about how maybe you use that or don't use that Virgo energy in your life. Virgos, they just have this incessant need to be resourceful and helpful. And it can be the most beautiful gift of theirs, but when it becomes debilitating to their health and their ability to stay out of anxiety is a really big deal. Another interesting piece about Virgo energy is it literally spans the gap between the sign of Leo and the sign of Libra. And at the very tail end of Virgo, at the very, 0 degrees Libra, is when we head into fall equinox. So one of the things that we talk about in ancient astrology that can make Virgo a little bit more anxious is Virgo is the tail end of the summer into fall, and it's leading into the autumnal equinox when we're heading towards the dark. So we're heading towards the shadow. And so Virgo, it does this little dance between light and shadow as we head into the season of Libra. And it can be anxiety producing, because I guess my best visual as I was sitting here thinking about Virgo is I live in Colorado, and we have a tunnel that goes through the mountains called Eisenhower Tunnel. And when you're coming up the mountain, you're going into the tunnel, you're going into the dark, you cannot see the other side. And even though there's light in there and everything like that, you're inside a tunnel, inside a mountain. And for probably, earlier, I've done it a million times now, but prior to the million times I had done it, I probably could be some anxiety producing, because you're driving into the dark and you cannot see the light. And then as you get through the tunnel, you start to see the light on the other side, and you're anticipating going back out into the light. But that's not what Virgo sees. Virgo's only seeing the part where they're driving into the tunnel and it's dark. So that's just an interesting visual. I don't know if that's helpful for thinking about what the Virgo season is, and how we start to really think about like how we're heading back into the darkness of when there's more dark than light in the day and evening. So so it's just an interesting way to do it. So let's pull up the chart of September and or of Virgo, excuse me, which starts on Monday, August 22nd. So on Monday, August 22nd, we have the sun moves into 0 Virgo. So what we'll find during Virgo season is that we have lots of planets that end up in Earth, which is great. So during this time frame, which we'll often find in fall, it's a good time to declutter. It's a good time to get organized. It's a good time to get back to a routine. Another great word for Virgo is routine. They thrive when they have routine. So it's always interesting to me that that's when the kids go back to school, because moms, having some history with being a mom of kids going back to school, and also working with moms with kids going back to school, get out of their routine in the summer because they're scrambling, trying to get their kids and vacations and But once you get back into school, you become a routine. You've got the kids' schedule, you've got their after school schedule, work, and you kind of get back into some kind of routine. You got to have dinner ready because you got to have homework and etc. So I think that's a really interesting thing of Virgo season being that return to routine, and how that can also mean taking care of your health, right? Maybe eating a little bit better, getting back to exercising because you're building that into your schedule again, or whatever it is at that point. So there is what the Earth season is also helping to bring us into. Now on August 24th, what happens is the planet Uranus, right here in Taurus at 18 degrees Taurus, turns retrograde. And it will go retrograde for about 5 months, as the outer planets do. And this is the final outer planet to turn retrograde, meaning Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Chiron are all retrograde starting on the 24th of August. And for about 6 weeks or so, until I think Pluto turns direct first. So for about 6 weeks, all these outer planets are in this reflective process. They're in this slowing down process. Now they spend a lot of the year, sometimes, almost half, I would say between 4 and 5 months. They all spend about, I don't think any of them spend 6 months, but 5 months a year going backwards. So we don't put a lot of emphasis on this, but it can be important if it's affecting somewhere in your chart. So if 18 degrees Taurus is a hotspot for you, or anytime, anywhere between 15, I think it's going back to 15 degrees Taurus, anywhere in that realm, this is going to end up this will be a reflective period for you of where you may have taken an erratic, or if we know that Uranus rules like erratic and surprise and awakening, and maybe we did something impulsively, potentially even this summer under the Mars transit, that maybe we're going to take a time to really bring it back in, use the Earth of Virgo, and be able to look backwards at it and say, is this the step I really wanted to take? And if it is, then to have that momentum to really move forward. I think we often find that the 5 days before it goes retrograde and the 5 days after it goes retrograde, that 10-day period, which will start then on, say, the 19th of August and go through like the 29th of August, that can be a place where it's more activated regardless of where it is in your chart. So just, again, I hate to say it, but maybe paying attention to slowing down, accident prone, paying attention to anything that's surprising coming in during that time frame, and really just bringing it into your system and knowing you're going to have time to work with it during its retrograde period. So that is just something to note. Then the next day, on August 25th, Mercury moves into Libra. So Mercury has been in Virgo for just about 3 weeks, probably not, just about 3 weeks or so. And it is slowing down because it's getting ready to turn retrograde. So Mercury in Libra is in the element of air. So in the element of air, Mercury goes from where it was paying attention to discerning details, it was making these videos, it was being very pragmatic about how it made these videos, to going into air, where it might be more interested in, maybe I'll be bringing in more color, or I'll be bringing in someone else to talk about. That would be very Mercury and Libra, bringing in someone else to talk about astrology with me instead of me just talking to me on these videos. But Mercury and Libra, so it's about the air sign, it's about the connection, it's about the relationship that you have within your environment. So where you are and what you look at when you're doing your work or in your household, and also the environment of the people that you have around you and the relationship. So your relationship to your home or your workspace or whatever it is, and how that affects you. and then your relationship to others and how that affects you as well. This is Mercury and Libra, and something that you're going to play with during this time frame. Mercury and Libra has a hard time making up their mind. So it's going to be in Libra. When will it go back? It'll go back into Virgo sometime towards the end of September. And I think during this time frame when it's in Libra is it can get a little bit indecisive. So forgive yourself on that one. And remember, the sun is in Virgo, and Venus will be moving into Virgo in this time frame. So we'll have this energy to maybe help us make more practical decisions, and to know when it's okay to be indecisive. Like when you're like, you know what, I'm just not ready to make this decision yet. But when it becomes a problem is when you might need to get someone else, a therapist or an astrologer, or someone to be able to be like, okay, I've got to make this decision. So let's get practical. Let's get some details down. And then let's also speak to the heart. So Mercury in Libra kind of has all of those qualities going on. So that is on August 25th. On August 27th, we have a new moon in Virgo. So that means we have the sun and the moon in Virgo. This is not the exact time. It's at actually 2:16 a.m. So just picture that the sun and moon are both at 4 degrees Virgo, which it will be at 2:16 in the morning Mountain Time in Colorado. And during this time frame, this is actually really Mercury, a new moon in Virgo is a really beautiful time to start something really practical, to start something that's really devoted to health and service, whether it's to yourself or to others. There's a lot of good energy around that. So here's what's affecting it in this new moon. During this time frame, the sun and the moon is going to be squaring Mars in Gemini. So Mars will have just moved into Gemini on August 20th. This will be the first aspect really that gives a challenge to Mars. It is a square position. And so this can produce more tension. So when the sun and the moon are squaring Mars, we are looking at our life force is squaring this, and it's the sun. The moon is our environment, and it's squaring this Mars and Gemini thing that, can be a little bit impulsive with how we speak, impulsive with what we do. This will be the first time that there might be a slowdown. So when you look at the signs of Gemini and Virgo, they're both double-bodied mutable signs, which means that they can see things both ways. Now, Gemini has a way to be like, I'm going to do this. And then Virgo gets on board and they're like, great, I'm going to make a plan. And then a minute later or a day later or a week later, Mars and Gemini is like, yeah, that's stupid. I don't really feel like doing that. And Virgo's like, well, wait, I made a plan. We were all ready to go. I budgeted for it, the whole thing. And Gemini's like, yeah, I don't care. That's the first thing we're going to experience with new moon in Virgo. And so if this is, so just to witness this, not all ideas are good ideas and ideas that need to be executed and brought to life. But not all ideas need to be thrown away either, Mars and Gemini. So, it's getting some practicality around what has some earth and grounding behind it, that Virgo energy, and then using that Mars energy to give it that oomph and that pizzazz and that jazz and that la la la, and to give it a little bit more excitement, which Virgos doesn't always have. So just to really watch that. This can be a little bit volatile energy. Anytime you have Mars in the mix, as we discovered in August and July, Mars was in the mix with Uranus. This is a little different, but we need to really watch. I would say the number one thing is our languaging and our words. Words can hurt in this. So we just have to really pay attention to that and be discerning about our words. The other piece that's interesting here is Uranus is at 18 degrees Taurus. Will have just turned retrograde just a few days before, and it is squaring Venus. So what will this mean? Well, one of the things is like, this could be a new friendship coming in, right? So this could be someone that you didn't even know. This could be like meeting somebody new and having an exciting experience and being like, oh, this is so cool. This could be a new adventure. This could be any kind of exciting experience. With the square, it tends to be more on the other side of really having something surprising come in. So again, following on that, we have to really watch what we're saying, pay attention to someone that isn't aware and doesn't do astrology, or doesn't have very good conscious practices of how to watch their languaging, that this could create that. Like someone could say something really shocking to you. Uranus rules shocking. So like really paying attention to that. And then you get to come back in, hopefully, and not respond, although this is really responsive, like reactionary energy. That, again, you have one of two things, right? We can either react and then come back and say we're sorry if it's needed, or have that long overdue conversation that maybe needed to be said, and try to do it with kindness and compassion, but but with being able to share the truth. Not the easiest of aspects, but we're going to have a trine later in September that will be maybe this could also be like the breakup of something that's been stagnant, that we can revisit again in September when Venus trines Uranus and bring it back together in a more healthy version. So we don't have to be like, this is it, I'm done. It may just be one of those things where it's like things are said or some action happens that gets to be resolved later in September. So I'll give you those dates as we go through the weekly videos, when Venus is going to be trining Uranus and where we have an opportunity for reconciliation around an action or some wording around then. So pay attention to that one. Oh, the other thing that's really interesting about this, the other thing is we do have Venus opposite Saturn. I do really feel like this energy, Venus square, this T square with Uranus squaring Venus and Uranus squaring Saturn, which I'll do a whole separate video about, this Uranus square Saturn situation. And releasing in Scorpio is really finding that quiet and that discernment to really find your truth, and to dig really deep into what it is meaningful for you. This is not the first time we've seen this T square. It has been present through all of August with various planets involved, and with Scorpio being the important piece of like how we look at this energy, how we dig deep on this energy, how we really get quiet with the energy, and maybe use water as a resource to cool our nervous systems, to cool our jets, and then to go forward with what the action is or what the words are that we want to say about it. It's not the easiest. That's not going to be this is not one of the easiest days. I'm going to be traveling during this time frame, so ought to be interesting, but it's good awareness to know this in advance. Okay, the next thing, this is where I want to look at, is September 4th. This is the day that Venus, she's not in there according to this, she must move in later in the day. Venus moves into Virgo. So Venus and Virgo. So here we have the feminine energy in our chart moving into the sign of the Virgin. So the Venus moving into the sign of not wanting to be owned or possessed is a really interesting way to look at Virgo. So Venus is in her detriment in Virgo. She doesn't like Virgo because Venus actually doesn't like to be alone, and Venus in Virgo often wants to be alone. So it's a dichotomy that there needs to be finding some kind of marriage in there of how much time do I need alone to recharge my energy, and how much time do I need to be out with others. The cool thing about Venus and Virgo is she gets to work on maybe some health components or some beauty components. I always look in the chart to see if I can find Venus and Virgo, like in my estheticians, the people who do facials or the people who do nails or something with beauty. I find Venus and Virgo, that can often be something that they have. So if you have been putting off some treatments around beauty or even health, this will be a really interesting time frame. She is in Virgo for about 3 weeks, so probably till about the end of the month. I did about the end of September, and I don't have those exact dates, but I'll give them to you in the weekly video. And so that'll be her transition as she makes her way through Virgo for these 3 weeks. Okay, the big thing in the month is Mercury retrograde, which happens on September 9th. And so if you're familiar with astrology, you know what happens during Mercury retrograde. And if you're not, one of the things we notice is thought processes, communication practices, technology, travel can all go a little haywire. So we want to use this time frame to really pay attention to written contracts, to pay attention to our travel and have patience, to pay attention to our communication and hastily. Remember, Mars is in Gemini. So we want to be really careful about how we send our emails, our texts, multitasking. Mars is really interested in moving fast and multitasking. That can go awry with our communications, especially during this time frame. So Mercury is retrograde from September 9th, Friday, September 9th through October 2nd. And there's a couple of things that are going to happen in here, which I'll talk about in a minute. And Mercury is going to go from it retrogrades at 8 degrees Libra. So if you know your chart and you know what that means, you can take a look at that. And it's going to go back to 24 Virgo. So if you have planets between 8 degrees Libra and 24 degrees Virgo, you will want to take a look at that in your chart and pay attention to that. And if you don't know, then this is a good time to get a reading to figure out, like, what is this Mercury retrograde trying to teach me, and what are all these aspects trying to teach me. Mercury is going to do a few things during its retrograde pattern. It's going to oppose Jupiter. It's going to oppose Neptune, and it's going to trine Pluto. Now, I talked back in the last video of Leo. It had already trined Pluto and opposed Neptune once on August 21st and 22nd. And so we had some experience during that time frame. Now, as we headed into just a few days prior to Mercury retrograde, where is it? Mercury had been opposite Jupiter on September 1st, exact degree. So it stays in orb of Jupiter during this time frame, but it's so Mercury opposite Jupiter. So what is that asking us? So Mercury opposite Jupiter is one of those experiences of being able to take an idea and to take people that we are working with in that, and being able to create potentially a symbiotic experience or relationship, an environment again, or something like that. So Mercury opposite Jupiter, this is thinking outside the box. This is thinking big picture. This is thinking beyond the minutia. There isn't a lot of minutia in this. So really thinking about, like, using this big energy to, like, kind of think about what's the overall reason as to why I'm making these videos. And then the sun in Virgo, and now Venus, as Venus moves into Virgo, might be able to take care of some of the minutia and some of the details that go along with it. But Mercury opposite Jupiter is that opportunity to look really at that bigger picture of why you're doing what you're doing. And like I said, this is in play all the way through retrograde. So as we look at it, Mercury, as it goes backwards, it stays near Jupiter all the way through September 18th. Yeah, all the way through September 18th. And even into the 19th, it's opposite Jupiter. So for the better part of September, the first 3 weeks of September, Mercury is opposite Jupiter. So the first week before we go retrograde, from September 1st through the 9th, is an opportunity to look at, like, what is this big idea I have? What is it that I want to do? How do I go bigger, broader? What's the philosophical reason why I'm doing this? Because Jupiter rules, like, philosophy, the metaphysical, the spiritual component, the 30,000 foot view. So thinking about some of those things. Then once Mercury goes retrograde from the 9th through the 19th, might be an opportunity to be like, that works, that doesn't. I'm working on my website. That color I like, that color I don't like. What is the overall theme of what I'm trying to do here? Whatever it is, if it is a website, if it is a business idea, if it is any of those things, like going back and reviewing what it is that may have come out during those first 10 days of the month or 9 days of the month of September. The other thing that's going to happen is, as Mercury goes backwards into Virgo, which it does on, does that on September 23rd, Mercury enters back into Virgo in retrograde. It's going to back into first a trine with Pluto again, which it had already done, like I said, on August 21st and 22nd. So as it goes to, as it goes to 26 of Virgo, it makes a beautiful trine to Pluto. So we're looking at, and it's backwards. So something may have been uncovered in that weekend of August 20th, 21st, 22nd, somewhere in there in that week. Mercury was trining Pluto, and we may have investigated something. We may have uncovered something. We may have gotten really focused on something. And we're going to get a chance to review that here a month later on September 26th and during this time frame. Really, actually, all the way into for the next few weeks, because Mercury only retrogrades to 24. So it stays an orb of Pluto this whole time. So knowing that, there's an investigative journalist period here of like, I think this is true for me. I don't think this is true for me. Mercury trine Pluto, really using that power, that force, and that energy to discern what it is that's true for you. And maybe you might have to backpedal on a few things that you had initiated or not. Well, just something to look at. Now, as Mercury backs into its opposition with Neptune, which it did on 8/21, August 21st, and then stays in play all the way from the 28th, basically the 28th, all the way through like October 5th. This is an interesting time frame to be thinking about what your intuition is saying to you. So we talked about this in the last week of Leo, that Mercury was opposite Neptune and it was direct then. So Mercury opposite Neptune at its best has some great downloads, can really just channel. I always think about it like it's like this channel that comes through and you know something, but you can't quantify why you know it. This is going to be a time where you're like, did I nail that one? Did I download something that actually was something that was really that I wanted to do, or that this whole experience was exactly the way I wanted to go? Or did I get deceived? Because Neptune at its worst can be deceptive. So did I get taken into like a contract or something that I was like, oh shoot, I don't want to do that contract, or oh shoot, I don't want to do that. And then you're like, okay, well, do I get out of it or do I stay in it? Or what is this for us? So this is just an interesting thing to pay attention to. Is it checking in on your intuition, and are you trusting your gut? Or did you not trust your gut and now you're into something that is not exactly what you wanted? So this will be in play. Both these aspects will be in play through like October 5th, October 7th. So you've got a few weeks here to play with that, and that whole Mercury experience. So yeah, Mercury always looking backwards and always looking at, well, in its retrograde pattern, always revisiting communication, technology, relationship, and intuition, and how we're trusting our gut for sure is something in there as well. And then the last thing I want to say for Virgo month is let's talk about this full moon. So the full moon is September 10th at 4 a.m. Mountain Time. So it was a little bit prior to this. So the moon's a little bit late. It is an orb of Neptune. So the sun is the sun is beginning its opposition to Neptune in Pisces. It also is opposing the moon in Pisces. So the Neptune and the moon are conjunct in Pisces, opposite the sun in Virgo. This energy is it's always this service and sacrifice component. I love to look at this moon and be like, this is a compassionate moon. This is a kind moon. This is a moon that really likes to make videos. This is a moon that really likes to watch videos. However, I think one of the interesting things is looking at, it's like, where am I being in compassion and kindness? And where am I sacrificing myself for my compassion and kindness? Really discerning, like bringing in that energy of this is actually the day after Mercury goes retrograde. So this might be a place where we are finding that discernment of what it is, of what, I'm having a totally, I'll talk about Mercury retrograde and I'm completely spacing out. All that discernment of like, am I being in my highest self of service? Am I getting caught up and deceived? Am I deceiving myself and I'm sacrificing myself somewhere? Let's see, in this moon also. So we've already talked about that Mercury is opposite Jupiter and it just went retrograde. And So we just discussed that. And so I think the other thing is that's happening in this full moon too is this Venus is squaring Mars. So Mars is very active and outgoing in Gemini. And as we discussed, Venus is not in Virgo. So finding that balance of like, what, where am I honoring myself? Where am I not honoring myself? So you can see the whole theme. That's the whole thing I love to look at with all these different full moons, new moons, retrogrades, that kind of thing, is there's a pattern and a theme that shows up no matter which planet we're looking at. And so really discerning, like, how am I taking care of my receptivity, which is the feminine, and how am I taking care of my outgoing, like, external drive? So if you want to put it in computer terms, how am I taking care of my internal drive and my external drive? How am I taking care of my feminine and my masculine, which is included in all of us? We're all masculine and we're all feminine, and it's all included in us. And how are we honoring each part of that within ourselves? And that is also true for Virgo Pisces, very masculine, very feminine. Actually, well, they're both feminine sides. I take that back. So this is earth and water. So it's a lot about looking at the foundational aspects of how we're taking care of ourselves, how we're taking care of our home, how we're taking care of those we love, and how we're taking care of all the things we care for, actually, and discerning, probably having used some discernment as to what we care for and where it's too much. So those are just some interesting things to look at with that full moon. And I'll talk about that more in the weekly video. So that is the month overall. It is the one thing that's the hardest thing about Virgo month always, but with some of the aspects that are activated this month, is the nervousness, the anxiety. So just to really pay attention to that in yourself and maybe in others. So like if your kids are anxious when they're going back to school, and what tools and tips and practices can we do to reduce the anxiety, both within ourselves and then within our children or the people around us? The breathing is ruled, Mercury is how we calm down that mind. So Mercury rules Virgo. So how do we calm down the mind? How do we calm down that nervous system? What is it that we need to soothe it? And some of it is about being in water, always. That's one of the ways. And the other thing is about taking a deep breath, or maybe 10. And there's so many other tools that I'll try to remember to give you as we go into the weekly videos. But I hope this is helpful. Have a great Virgo month. Thanks.